Good evening, everyone. My name is Drew Broussard, and I'm a firefighter paramedic for the town of Air. And tonight we're going to be speaking about our community risk reduction program for the community. We are committed to protecting and serving in our line of work to the best of our abilities. When the tones drop, we react by providing care to the sick and injured in the ambulance, prioritizing life safety, incident stabilization, and property conservation on the fire side. Imagine there was a method to prevent injuries and mitigate fire potential from growing into a fire scene. Implementing a community risk reduction plan addresses the area of concern and mitigates the problem before the emergency happens. As the name implies, community risk reduction is devising a plan to reduce the amount of risk a community can endure, whether it's reducing the number of overdoses that occur per capita or developing a program that protects the firefighters from immediate danger of life and health during an emergency at the Firefighter Killer Cold Storage Facility. No matter the community risk reduction plan, the value of protecting the citizens and the first responders that protect those citizens remain priceless. You cannot put a price on safety, as our number one priority in the fire service is always life safety. By implementing this community risk reduction plan, the department grows as it looks to protect the town. For example, our fire department here in Air does the quarterly inspection plan with a pre-plan initiative that allows the department to assist in reducing risk in our commercial buildings. With our town primarily populated by commercial buildings, the potential for hazardous emergencies exponentially outweighs other threats. Developing a risk reduction plan for the quarterly inspection addresses the possibility of unsafe emergencies within the community properties. Since implementing this program, the efficiency of the 5 E's of risk reduction has been exercised to the best of its ability. The quarterly inspection plan allows the department to walk through the commercial property and enforce any code violations or unsafe practices that could cause problems during an emergency. Educating the property owners about life safety and storage practices and keeping egress points clear, just to name a few, allows the owners to practice safety in the workplace further. When educating and enforcing codes, developing an engineering plan for installing sprinklers inside the property helps reduce the spread of fire. Pre-planning a building with the necessary information, including hydrant locations, FTC connections, egress locations, and what the building stores or produces, help with emergency response by first responders by making early decisions that can mean the difference between property conservation and property loss. And not being able to lose a valuable asset to the community makes this program economically efficient. Some data. Developing a risk reduction plan takes time and effort, as it needs to pull from data collected over months to years. Data is collected from the community and profiled using 9 elements to describe data, including demographics, geography, building stock, public safety response agencies, community service organizations, hazards, economic factors, past loss events history, and critical infrastructure systems. Each one is vital in assisting in developing your community risk assessment. Still, in our case, past loss, event history, and economic factors have the most significant impact of the 9 elements. The commercial property that we're performing the risk assessment on is the Sandy Pond HVDC National Grid site. The Sandy Pond HVDC and National Grid power grid lines in Air, Massachusetts. The site was developed to be the first and only multi-terminal bipole HVDC system in the world where 3 stations are interconnected and operate under a common master control. The essential connection delivers hydropower from James Bay in Quebec to Sandy Pond in Air. The power is converted from AC to DC power, supplying around 22% of New Englanders with sustained hydro-dammed energy. When this property was developed in Air, the company had a multi-agency risk assessment conducted that included the state, the fire department, and the police department that developed possible risks to the community. These risks mainly focus on terror attacks and fires. To address fire risk, a water tower would be installed on site with multiple fire pumps, halon systems, and 4 AFFF foam systems. The company also paid for a new engine and supplied new 5-inch large diameter hose stock for all apparatuses. The company also paid for the training that it would take to implement all the 5-inch line. If an emergency did present itself, the installed fire protection systems, water towers, and a recently donated fire equipment were to be used to mitigate the crisis solely to this location. Domestic terror attacks were difficult to predict, but aided systems such as high security gating systems were installed. Radar with up to 5 miles of range for detected from 360-degree vantage points, to a newer system called ShotSpotter, which detected if gunfire was used within a certain vicinity of the facility and would be able to be pinpointed on a map. Risks to the community were meant to be kept at 0, but if an emergency did happen, the multi-agency of first responders would be prepared and be ready. At some point, no matter where you live, you have lost power in your house anywhere from minutes to days. But imagine if power was cut off for weeks or even months. The risks of losing the Sandy Pond HVDC substation would impact Air Massachusetts and New England, whose population hovers just above 15 million people. The human factor alone would cause havoc, as we wouldn't have a way to regain power once the grid was placed into service, or a secondary system would have to be established. The financial costs would be estimated in the billions of dollars to restore or replace the system and would take time. For example, in December 2004, a tower along the Quebec-New England transmission circuit near the Canadian-US border was damaged by explosives charged and detonated at its base. The bombing was later claimed by the Resistance Internationale, which stated that the attack was purposeful to denounce the pillaging of Quebec's resources by the United States. This was a fear of the company and was unable to be controlled. Compared to the money and the company spent during the risk assessment stage of the development is minimal compared to the possibility of the catastrophe during New England. Our mitigation strategies. As previously stated, when the company was developing this location, it conducted a multi-agency risk assessment, including state officials, the fire department, and the police department, to identify risks, then mitigate them to the best of their abilities. This is when the quarterly inspection program with the pre-plan initiative for Air Fire Department was developed. It was initially created solely for the site, but would be later used on all commercial properties here in Air. Every year, all the initial multi-agency assets inspect this property, addressing the protection system's functionality, the fire pump's efficiency, and testing the foam systems. This is also an opportunity for the fire department to implement the pre-plan incident. We would locate and mark all fire hydrants, FDCs, fire alarm control panels, and means of egress. We will take all this information and place it in a document and place it into a binder that is in each truck. This binder is used during an emergency to help devise a plan of attack during an emergency. In summary, a community risk reduction plan is essential to the fire department and citizens of the town that you serve. Having your plan in place, the ability to reduce or even mitigate your potential problems, saving money, crew resources, and most importantly, lives. Reducing the number of emergencies in town, no matter how small or large, benefits everyone. Just to show, here is the line that shows from hydropower that comes from Radisson up here in Quebec, all the way down to Sandy Pond in Massachusetts. This line covers all of New England. Also, these are the trucks that the fire hoses supplies by.